You're listening to Level Up with Wondr, a podcast where we take listeners on a journey through the exciting world of gaming, tech, and innovation. Join the Wondr Nation team as we talk with a diverse group of pros who have taken their skills to the next level.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Level Up with Wondr. I'm Deani Marvo, Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Operation, and I'd like to welcome Melanie Gross to Level Up with Wondr. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of background about Melanie. Melanie is currently the Senior Vice President and Head of Product at Golden Hearts Games. She has over 2 decades of experience in product, marketing, and operations in the iGaming industry, with previous positions at Caesars and Zynga. She has overseen the launch of iGaming and sportsbook sites in multiple states, led product management teams, and in 2023, she was recognized as the Woman of Inspiration in Gaming and Sports by Global Gaming Women and Women in Sports and Events. Congratulations, Melanie.
Thank you.
So let's start with your background. How did you get started in the gaming industry?
My first gaming job actually started in 2003. It's a company called Grand Virtual, which eventually became Everest Gaming. We were a small startup based in Boston and focused on the non-US gaming markets. So we had an online casino as well as a pari-mutuel sports betting site. I first started actually as a web content engineer. And what that meant was I had a combination of work for our front end for our website, and we had about a half dozen websites at the time. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And since we weren't US based, we served over 100 countries, which was really interesting at the time.
Wow.
And we had a translation management team. So that team was responsible for localizing all of our sites, collateral, marketing, etc. So that came through my team to make sure that the translation went through to the site and got uploaded properly.
Now, did you know that you always wanted to work in gaming?
I did not. I should have, if you think of my background. Growing up, games were a really big part of my life, and it's how my family spent time together. It's the only thing we sort of all agreed on together was to sit around and play games together. So we played a lot of board games. We played Sorry, Parcheesi, card games. My dad loved and still loves sports console games so much that it made lobbying for a new Atari or a new Nintendo very, very easy. When dad wants it too, it becomes a much easier argument. I grew up about 2 hours from Atlantic City. My family would go to Atlantic City and spend time there. They gambled. It was a healthy form of entertainment. I spent a lot of time in the arcade while they were there. So looking back, it seems like a no-brainer that I would have gravitated to the gaming space. But at the time, I didn't know that was a possibility or how to get there or how to put the pieces together. When I was younger, I wanted to work for NASA. And when I moved from New Jersey to Boston for college, I was a political science and English major, which is nothing to do with gaming. That lasted about a year and realized that I didn't want to move in that direction. I transitioned into communications, PR, comm law, advertising, and gaming was still never on my mind. But during my final year of school, I spent a semester abroad in London and worked for a web design company. And remember, this was the late 90s, so the internet is not what it was today. There were no iPhones. We were on dial-up or modem a lot for the internet, but I knew I loved the idea of web design and the internet, so I moved in that direction. After working for a failed real estate startup, I needed a job and found one on monster.com for those who are old enough to remember that site. It's really interesting how a random job application at the time turned into the career that I have today.
Absolutely. I know, Melanie, that you moved from more of like an engineering role into the business, into marketing. What skills or experiences were you able to leverage to be successful?
As I got more comfortable with my role as a web content engineer, I eventually managed the department. So I learned leadership skills, management skills. I interacted with the product teams and marketing teams quite a bit. And as I got more comfortable, I got more curious. So I started asking more questions about our games roadmap, about the success or failures of certain games, and realized that I wanted to just be closer to the P&L and understand why we made certain decisions. Why did we choose this game over another? Or why did the marketing team do this particular promotion versus another? And I just really enjoyed the analytics and seeing that you could drive change and see an immediate impact.
Mhm.
Whereas on the engineering side, you're certainly making an impact and you're executing on all of those ideas that the teams are asking you to deliver. But unless you're really partnering with someone in product or someone in analytics to hear about the impact, you're just going through the motions again on the next project and the next project. And I realized that I wanted to be on the other side of the table and be a part of those decisions and research into developing our roadmap or developing our marketing and promotions plans. An opportunity came up where there was an opening on the casino side, which was a passion of mine, to work on promotions and marketing. And it was the right place at the right time. The hiring manager took a chance on me. I was an internal candidate. It was a little bit unusual and not very common for someone to move from engineering to marketing, but it was one of those moments and times in my career that really changed the whole path of my future career, and I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah, I'm glad you took a chance on you too. It was a good bet with you.
Yes.
Absolutely. I love how you like to get underneath. It sounds like your motivation was to get underneath and understand the business more and be able to have that more
Yeah,
and see that immediate impact.
yeah, the why is really important, right? You need buy-in from everyone on your team. You need to believe in what you're building. And I think that helps me moving forward, when partnering with other stakeholders or other folks in the company that might not be as close to the strategy or the product, to really put the why at the forefront and make sure you get that trust and that buy-in
Mm,
as you're delivering new features or the strategy for the company.
absolutely. Now, as you kind of made that transition, did you run into any challenges? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
I'm thinking back now, it's been quite a while, but fortunately, I think when you're moving from one role to another and you're an internal candidate, I think that gives you a little bit of insurance, right? If you're
Mhm.
starting at a new company and changing your role a little bit, you don't have that history. You don't have people around you that trust in you or know, oh, Melanie was really good at this, or Melanie was really dependable, or Melanie always got the job done. So fortunately, I was able to take on a new responsibility, still having that blanket and that comfort around me where people didn't want
Mhm.
me to fail. So, on the one hand, I
That's
was able to transition a little more easily that way. On the other hand, it was probably a little harder to let go of some things because
mhm.
I was the one that always did it. And it got to a point where we said, hey, you can't be an engineer and a marketer at the same time. Fortunately, you have your superiors that go to bat for you and put together a good transition plan. But I would say I was very fortunate that I had a lot of support in making that change in that transition, which set everyone up for success.
Absolutely. It's always great when you have that support especially when you're doing these big transitions. So you've had a lot of experience in startups, which I think are exciting. But what attracts you to that type of environment?
Yes, I think we're both biased, right, in the startup space. I don't know why you wouldn't want to work at a startup, but I would say that in the beginning, it was luck or happenstance or accident that I ended up in startups. My first internship when I got back to the States after London was with a small startup. It was a woman who wrote a book and needed a couple of extra hands to help promote her book and market her book. It was literally out of her house. That just
Mm.
happened to be close to campus, and it was a job that worked out for me part time. When I studied abroad in London and learned some of the art of web design, it was a 3-person startup in London. That was just a cool job overall to be able to have some international experience. Then when I went to Everest, we were about 20 people when I started. I don't think startups are for everyone. Some people enjoy the big companies and enjoy having what I would say is a more structured career path, right? You might go
Mhm.
from coordinator to specialist to manager to director, and there's a very clear-cut path. And some people thrive in that environment and like knowing their progression. For me, I think if you have to be comfortable with uncertainty and there's no roadmap, and in some cases you're a department of one, which I'm sure you've been as well. On the plus side, things move at a faster pace, which I enjoy. I think there's less people signing off on things, less decision makers in the room, less red tape overall. That also leaves you very exposed, which I know is not for everyone. So, again, if you're that department of one, you're in charge of sending out emails and there's a typo in it, there's nowhere to hide, right? It's a very different way of looking at the business and being a part of it. If you're overwhelmed, there might not be someone to hand off that work to. It's up to
Absolutely.
you to solve these problems and figure it out, or work with the team quickly to get it done. I think there's a lot of pluses though to be on the startup side, and I think there's more action there and more change that happens on a daily basis, which can be overwhelming for some people, but I think there's a lot of excitement that goes along with it.
Absolutely, I would agree. And I think, like you said, it does take a certain type of demeanor, or certain type of professional who not only like enjoys it, but can thrive in that environment
Right.
where it is a lot of change, but it's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of opportunity. Sometimes, like you say, it's just you and there's no one to delegate to or hide in front of or behind of. But I agree. It can be a very rewarding type of environment to work on because you have the opportunity to have such a big impact that you wouldn't have at a large organization because it is small, because it is nimble. That's what I love
Right.
about it.
There's a lot of pride that goes into saying I did this thing, or
Mm.
this team of 3 people did this thing. It's very exciting to really be a large part of a change at a company and to be able to see that end to end. Whereas I think sometimes at a larger company, you're not necessarily seeing how all the pieces fit together, or you're not even seeing the people that made it happen altogether if 100 or 200 people are working on a
Mhm.
particular project. Whereas at a small company, you all fit in the same little Zoom window together as you're making this happen.
Absolutely. And as you think about, all of these experiences you had a lot with startups and unique, innovative experiences, what have been some of the favorite moments that you've had? Some of the most memorable ones along your path?
Whew, there's a lot of them. If I could break down some of my favorite moments, I'll think of maybe a highlight or two from each company.
Mhm.
So in 2011, I left Everest. And at the time, I was running 7 different casino brands. I had at that point moved from marketing to product and oversaw our entire casino business. So seven brands in, like I said, over 100 countries, 12 different languages. Really exciting time. I left to go to Zynga. Now, to put it in perspective, Zynga in 2011 was less than 1,000 employees. It was pre-IPO. It was the height of the Facebook social phenomenon. I was hired to work in the Boston office. However, I was sent to San Francisco for 4 months to work on Farmville. And that was like nothing I had ever seen before. So 100 people working on a game in a room that looked like Wall Street's boiler room, with projectors on the wall with all the different stats. Again, I went from a really small startup where a couple hundred people worked on 8 different websites, and here you have 100 people working just on one game. And there was real-time monitoring. Like I said, everyone was frantic and busy, and it was to sell virtual trees, purple cows, and fun in a social game. It was wild and intense. We partnered with Lady Gaga on a
So
particular promotion. I just think back to that time as such an exciting part of my life that explaining it now just seems so crazy, 10 or 12 years later after that. Another memorable moment for me is working for Caesars and going live with Real Money Gaming in November 2013. None of us, you wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be here on this call if we didn't have our history now of Real Money Gaming. It was a full circle moment for me going live in New Jersey. One, I'm from New Jersey, so it was great to have my hometown state go live and be the first site for regulated online casino. And then full circle because I had seen Black Friday when I worked for Everest and we were non-US gaming, but we saw what was happening for US gaming and thinking, will it ever happen in the US? Will we always work for international companies? So to be able to tie that back together and see it go live in the States, in New Jersey, brings me a lot of joy. I think another final moment for me would be the repeal of PASPA in 2018. I don't necessarily call it my favorite moment, but it was a memorable one. And it's a little bit of a funny story. In spring of 2018, there was a lot of fervor and speculation that PASPA would be repealed. In someone's office, we had a calendar of dates of when we were going to potentially hear a decision. One morning, I looked at the calendar and said, oh, it's going to be May 14th. And my colleague at the time said, who did you talk to? How do you know? What inside information did you get from someone? And I said, no, I'm going on vacation on May 14th. I guarantee that's going to be it. What do you know? Sure as anything, the morning of the 14th, I get a call. I'm in the airport. PASPA was repealed. Obviously, the PASPA repeal changed the trajectory of gaming here in the US, but it's a little bit of a funny tone over it as well.
Wow, those are some great stories. And I love how you've had this opportunity to be part of these very pivotal times that has really impacted the work that all of us do today. When you have a nimble career, you're able to move through and you're able to work with some of these startups, you get the opportunity to do some of these things. And you don't know on the front end, right? Hindsight's 2020. But when you look back, you can say, wait a minute, I've been part of some amazing things. So that's awesome. Love it, love it. So now let's come to your current role. Tell us about your current position, what you're responsible for, and what your favorite part of your job is.
Currently, I'm at Golden Hearts Games, and I'm the Senior Vice President and Head of Product. First and foremost, my job is to think about the player experience from the time they come to the site all the way through to their gaming experience. With my role, I manage and oversee a number of departments. First, obviously, is product. That's site content, features, promotional tools, our game inventory. We have hundreds of games on our site. We have hundreds of games in our backlog, and choosing the right games at the right time and flipping those on is under my purview. Another department I manage is retention and monetization. That is responsible for driving player behavior. So how does a player go through their first purchase flow? How do they choose the right game? If they haven't come to the site, why not? How are we going to get them back? What's going to entice them to come back and stick around? The final two departments that I manage, one is the design team. All of the marketing collateral is under that team, and they do a phenomenal job every day. We also create in-house games. So they're responsible for all of the graphics and icons and setup and animations that we create in-house. Finally, our last department is analytics. So all of the KPIs that we track on a daily, hourly basis falls under that team. All of our tracking and dashboards, any insights and testing, as well as competitive intel, just to make sure that we're in a competitive space with our industry and our formidable competitors.
So you have an amazing role with lots of responsibility. What is your favorite part of your job and what brings you the most joy?
For me, what I think is an exciting part of my job is just visibility and accessibility. What I appreciate at our company is anyone at the company can easily get FaceTime with someone else at the company, whether that's a junior employee or someone's looking to ask a question to the CEO or run an idea by him. We're very open and honest and very transparent with the team. And we like to foster that communication that anyone can ask a question, anyone can have an idea, good ideas come from anyone at the company, and someone is always there to listen and take that idea.
I love that. I love that. So, what has been your proudest moment thus far in your current role?
My proudest moment so far is anytime the team rallies around a game-changing initiative, no pun intended. But when you believe in a particular change, the data shows that it's the right decision, the team's brought in, the why of the decision has been made, and the team just gets behind it and sees the picture, lays out how to get from point A to point B, and everyone's rowing in the right direction. That's the sweet spot, right? Everyone's aligned, everyone's working towards the same common goal. There's magic in that full circle moment where the idea was proven, the team worked together, the idea or feature was brought to the public, and the public embraced it. There's nothing like it, and it's addictive to want to keep having those at bats and those wins with your team.
I love that. So let's talk about some learnings. What learnings have you been able to transfer from working internationally to US based?
I think every time you're at a new company, it's an opportunity to take what you've learned and then expand upon it, iterate on it, etc. I used to always think that working in the US was going to be easier. As I mentioned earlier, 100 countries, 12 languages. One of our products was in 16 languages. And I thought,
Wow.
one state and we're just in English. This is going to be a piece of cake. I think what was different going from Real Money International to Real Money US is just the different regulations, right? And the fact that as different states came online, New Jersey and then Pennsylvania, there were similar but disparate regulations for each state. So that, in a sense, was learning a new language, right? The language of the DGE versus the language of the PGCB, and understanding where there was alignment with certain features or requirements or reporting, and then find the areas that might be a little bit different from one state to the other, trying to isolate those differences and then lean into them and have the best product for each state. I believe having that background of different marketing and different rules and regulations for different countries was applicable to different marketing and different rules and regulations for each state.
Absolutely. And we definitely know how to make it complicated here, don't we?
Yes.
You shared that at one point in your career, you were able to help your organization increase efficiency, and you went from launching 2 games a year to 2 games a month, which is incredible. So why don't you share with us how you were able to accomplish that?
I think at the time, it was, for those listening that are into project management and engineering, we made a big shift in the company at the time from waterfall to agile. And I always put an asterisk on that we did real agile and not what I call shortened waterfall or mini waterfall. So one, really iterating on our product and iterating on those games and trying to find efficiencies with our product management and project management process was incredibly important. I believe that a fundamental difference in our timing from 2 games a year to 2 games a month was simply figuring out what to say no to. I think sometimes the no is more important than the yes. And where possible, of course, you want to have data-driven decisions. And we realized that we were spending a lot of time on features within the game that only a small percent of the players would ever even see. So why are we putting all of our development time in that basket, so to speak, when it was a very small part of the funnel? And then from there, it's who's going to have these types of wins, who's going to have a big win, who's going to get a bonus round, what's going to happen in the bonus round. We went through each of those areas and said what's really important and what's important for the game and what's important for the player. There were a lot of hard decisions. It's not easy, especially when you have really talented team members who all have creative minds and want to build a really great interactive game. But you also want the game to be out into the public and making money. And as an old colleague of mine once said, good is good, done is better. Done being out in the wild is what's going to make money. You certainly want a good game, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and have the game that's going to really appeal to audience members and whoever your target audience is. Just don't get in your own way. And I think that's what we learned. In some cases, we were in our own way and it was slowing us down.
And clearly that worked out for you guys, and you were able to really increase efficiency by making those changes.
Yeah, it not only was the efficiency better, the games actually did better. So then when you have a winning game and the games are driving additional revenue, that brings momentum. There's momentum and there's buy-in to the team. And if the team sees the numbers are going up, they're sharing this information with the engineers, with the design team, with analytics. Now you're cultivating a culture where people see what they did, they saw the results, they saw the wins, and who doesn't want to keep winning? It turned into friendly competition. Who was the lead on this game and who had the winning game? And okay, this is now the top game and the game to beat. It became friendly competition within the company, which is great for everyone. It was really fun.
I love that. That's awesome. So you've worked in both marketing and engineering. How can these departments work better together? What advice would you give to other organizations that were looking for better working relationships?
I believe the best way that departments can work together is to remember that we're all in this together to deliver the best player experience. And what does that mean? For engineering, it might mean a certain list of wishes. And for the marketing team, it's a different set of wishes. But good communication solves that. Again, we talked about different languages. Just like there's different languages when you're an international company, there's a different language for marketing and a different language for engineering. So how do they speak together? And I think the best way to do that is to be in each other's shoes and see each other's perspective. So if an engineering team, for example, is trying to build a tool for marketing needs to be in the room at some point and not only deliver what their wish list is, but they need to see it and touch it and feel it, right? They might not speak the databases and the tables and the fields that are required unless you're a recovering engineer turned marketer, but they are able to say, here's how I currently use this tool. Here's what's really annoying about this tool. Can you help me? What can we do so that I don't have 17 clicks to set up a campaign, right? We've all been there. We've all used systems that are a little bit clunky. And instead of someone in product writing up requirements, working with engineering, throwing it over the wall, how is everyone seeing and feeling that pain? I think when you see the pain or you see the problem firsthand in the system, they are a little bit more connected to the problem and they're seeing the human behind the problem struggling. And I think that helps foster healthy communication. I also think it's helpful for marketing to speak with engineering, start to learn some of the patterns or terms that they're using so that they can help walk the walk or talk the talk that engineering's using. They don't need to get an engineering degree, but it's nice if they can meet in the middle a little bit. And then that helps build trust between the two teams.
Absolutely. I think we can all get very siloed in our departments and in our functional roles. But like you said, taking that opportunity to step a little bit in someone else's shoes can really help with that working relationship. So it's great advice there. So let's pivot to talking about leadership. Clearly, as a woman with the career that you have been a great leader. So what qualities do you feel like make a great leader?
A good leader should be able to communicate the mission, the vision, the values of the company in a way that's easy to understand. And they also need to stand behind it if they want their team to be strong, punctual, independent, data-driven, et cetera, they need to do it as well, right? If we say we're a data-driven company, we believe that we have enough insights to drive player value, and then I turn around and I'm a leader that says, no, I don't really like the color blue, so let's not use blue today. That's not fair. I'm saying let's use data, and then I turn around and I have very emotional decisions. That's going to reduce trust from those that I work with and those that work for me. I think another important thing is being decisive and knowing a leader's not always going to get it right. But the worst thing that I think a leader can do is do nothing. So if they're not sure of something, pick a lane, time box it, budget box it, feature box it, just do something so that you have your team moving in a direction with the ability to pivot. Another strength of a good leader is being able to set their team up for success. We've all had external factors that can prevent a team member from being set up for success. But what can the leader control, and how are they communicating with their team? And are they setting up their team members to the best of their ability? Are they being transparent with their team? Are they finding opportunities that their team members are interested in? Sometimes growth, unfortunately, can't always be a raise, a promotion, world domination. But if there are things that a team member is interested in, the leader should look out for that, right? Just thinking about your team as individual team members and finding strengths and opportunities for them to cultivate their career.
What role has mentorship played in your career and your leadership journey?
I think mentors have been such an instrumental part of my career. And I know it sounds very trite, but I know without certain people in my career at the particular time and space that they appeared, I definitely would not literally be where I am today, living in Las Vegas. I would not have the role that I have, and I would not have the success and the accolades and the history of my career that I've had. Point blank, end of story. Drop the mic.
When you think specifically about the presence of women, how has the presence in leadership roles, specifically in gaming, evolved since your career began? And do you feel like there are still areas of improvement?
I believe when it comes to women's leadership, there's always work to be done. I think the road is unfortunately very long. Every day, I'm amazed by what women in my network are accomplishing, what they continue to accomplish every day. But with that, I also hear the reverse. I'll get a text from someone that was in a situation that we'll roll our eyes at, or someone may have been passed over for a job or an opportunity when they checked all the boxes and had more experience, and it's questionable why they didn't get the job. And though I think there's always areas for improvement, I really put my focus on the women who are achieving great things and being put in positions of power. And my hope is that they can shine a light on future leaders and help people under them grow and lift themselves up. And we see that with a number of women in this industry. So my outlook is hopeful that things will continue on the right path.
I love that. So let's have a little bit of reflection. How do you see the gaming industry evolving over the next few years?
I think one of the challenges / opportunities of the gaming industry is not dissimilar to the movie industry. If you think back, I'll pretend the movies never existed, pretend going to a movie theater never existed. And in the year 2025, I say to you, Deani, what are you doing this weekend? Would you like to come with me and drive 25 minutes? Because I want to take you to this warehouse type place where we're going to pay $20 and we're going to sit in these chairs and we're going to watch a show, but we can't be late. And your soda is going to cost $10 and your popcorn is going to cost $12, and you're going to have to sit with a couple hundred other people that you don't know. And that's going to be our Friday night. You would probably say to me, why are we leaving the house? Can't we just watch Netflix, right? And I think movie theaters evolved. You can now pick your own seat. Some have better food, wine, etc., that you can sit and have a better experience. It evolved. And I think in some cases, we're at a little bit of a turning point with mobile gaming and land-based gaming. There's always that healthy conversation between the land-based team and the online team. Land-based says, you're using our database, you're bringing players online. Well, what are you going to do for me? What are you doing with those online players? And what are you going to do to bring them to our casino? Think of the movie theater conversation. Okay, I live 2 hours from Atlantic City. I'm going to drive 2 hours. I'm going to go to the hotel. My room may or may not be ready. Food and beverage may or may not be more expensive. The slot machine I like might be taken. Or I might go to the bar and 3 video poker screens are down and out. And I might say, why did I just drive 2 hours for this when I was at home in my comfy couch with my temperature the way I like it and the food the way I like it, and I have wine at home and I have my TV at home and I have my casino at home. I think that's a real conversation, right? Is what's going to make that experience better than what I have at home? And it's going to get me in the car to leave my house and have a different gaming experience. That's the question.
So let's talk about legacy. What legacy do you hope to leave in both your current position and beyond?
Oh, legacy. That sounds daunting. But I think I'm fortunate that I was someone who was in the heart of major gaming shifts several times in my career. So I think my legacy there is that I was around to help shape some of the processes and procedures and work with the regulators and work with land-based casinos and online operators to figure out how to do this all for the first time in a very early stage at each part of those areas of my career. On a personal note, when someone describes me and describes my legacy, I hope they say I'm authentic. I hope they say that I was fair and that you may not always agree with me. My team may not always agree with me. But at the end of the day, I'm trustworthy and fair. And I think that goes a long way. I've left positions and left companies where that wasn't the case because that was so important to me that I need leadership to look in the mirror and walk the walk and talk the talk and collaborate and be someone that's an area of trust. I want my legacy to be that I'm an executive, but nothing's beneath me. I roll up my sleeves. I get my hands dirty. When we were having New Jersey get ready to go live for sports betting, a favorite funny memory is literally like scraping gum off the tables in the sports book to make sure that they were ready for sports betting the next day. I think that that's important. I think everyone should just be part of the team and whatever it takes, whatever your title is. We all have the same mission and goals, and we all need to get there together.
Love that. That's an amazing legacy to leave. So the last question here for you is, what advice would you give to young professionals who are looking to get in the gaming industry?
My advice for a young professional in the gaming industry is to be hungry and be curious and to try to network as much as possible and learn all the different facets of the business. I believe that understanding end-to-end how this industry works is important. I think for women, we've talked about global gaming women and the great legacy that has come from global gaming women. It's free to join. I always point that out, especially to young professionals. Sign up, make friends, have networking opportunities. I always laugh because I've said this on a number of panels and various interviews that I'm not the most extroverted person on the planet. Networking is not my strong suit. So I always feel slightly hypocritical when I tell people, go out, get out there, put your face out there. But I think there's ways that you can do that within your comfort zone. I also know that you should do things that make you uncomfortable. You'll start to get more comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I give myself homework to put myself out there more, to be part of more networking events, because they really are beneficial for the industry. If not for you, you might help someone else out. You might give someone else an opportunity by meeting through that networking event. If I put my supervisor hat on, some advice I would give for someone more junior in the space is volunteer and take initiative within your team. If there's a feature you want to work on, a project you want to work on, put your name in the ring. But what I encourage and double down on is that's secondary to what your primary job is. I think all too often there might be a shiny project that an eager person might want to work on and may forget about what their deadline is, or they might get distracted, and that's not going to work out well. You have your primary job, you have your deadlines, get your job done, and then consider the initiative and putting your hand up as the extra credit. But what you were hired for is first and foremost, and that's what your reputation is going to be built on. You made a contract with your stakeholders to get that job done, and make sure you do it well, and people will see that and see your performance and see your success, and hopefully that snowballs into other opportunities.
Well, that is amazing advice. And I want to say, Melanie, thank you so much for being a guest on Level Up with Wondr. Thank you for sharing your insights and your story. And I'm really sure that our listeners will really be happy to hear all of this.
Thank you. Pleasure to be a part of it. Thanks for having me along for the ride.
Thank you for listening to Level Up with Wondr. Visit wondrnation.com/level up for more podcast episodes about how we're reimagining the gaming entertainment industry. Want to level up your business? Visit our contact page at wondrnation.com to inquire about our strategic consulting or management services.